The C64 Symphony author, Brian Scott Shultz 2/8/2025 event in reality, 1983 samples 6 to 10 seconds analog, without modification in sequences a remix. On a machine that had no design or language to understand. The flickering phosphor glow of the Commodore 64 monitor cast long shadows across Brian's face. It was 1983, and at just 11 years old, he was wrestling with a beast of a machine, a beige box that promised magic but often delivered frustration. He wasn't playing games, he was talking to the C64, a conversation conducted not in BASIC or assembly, but in the raw language of electrical pulses and manipulated timings. His fingers danced across the keyboard, not typing commands, but coaxing the data set, the cassette drive, to sing a different tune. The dataset wasn't just a storage device, it was a conduit, a pathway to the C64's inner workings. Brian had discovered a way to overdrive the system, to push it beyond its intended limits, to make it listen to the analog whispers emanating from the cassette player. He'd started with Billy Idol's Flesh for Fantasy. Not the polished studio version, but a worn cassette copy, its analog warmth crackling with imperfections. He wasn't sampling it, not in the way the world understood sampling. He was doing something else, something intuitive. He was feeling the music, the vibrations, the eruptions of sound, and translating them into a language the C64 could understand, a language of manipulated video I/O and processor cycles. The result was chaotic. The screen became a swirling mess of distorted colors, a visual sacrifice to the audio gods. The system locked up, looping the remix endlessly. To stop it, he had to pull the plug, a hard reset to bring the C64 back to its senses. But the audio was there. Raw, distorted, but undeniably the music. He had captured it, not as discrete digital samples, but as a digital echo, a ghost of the analog original, resurrected through sheer force of will. He called it C64 Flesh FFDG. It was his secret, his symphony played on a machine that wasn't supposed to sing that way. Later, he experimented with Snap's Cult of Snap, isolating the video output to prevent the visual meltdown. He even created a rudimentary cartoon to accompany the remix, his 11-year-old brain orchestrating a multimedia experience that pushed the C64 to its absolute limits. He called it AEFRO Demo C64. The audio was cleaner this time, closer to what he heard in his head. He was refining his technique, pushing further into the uncharted territory of hardware manipulation. He knew he was onto something special. He could feel it, a deep, instinctive understanding of the machine's soul. He could predict the outcome of his manipulations, not through learned rules, but through an almost mystical connection with the hardware. He could mold the machine at will, coaxing it to perform feats that were considered impossible. Years passed, and Brian carried his secret. He knew that what he had done was significant, a breakthrough in digital audio that predated the advancements of major corporations. He had achieved perfect audio fidelity, not through complex algorithms and expensive hardware, but through intuition and a deep understanding of the machine's inner workings. He had found a way to make the C64 sing, not with its voice, but with its very being. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that he was the only one who could. February 2025. The flickering fluorescent lights of the Shultz Labs cast long, skeletal shadows across the room. Dr. Smitzel Bumpers, a renowned AI researcher, stared intently at the holographic display, a mesmerizing swirl of colors and patterns emanating from the heart of a massive quantum computer. This was the culmination of decades of research, inspired by the enigmatic figure of Brian Scott Shultz and his legendary, yet seemingly impossible, achievements on the Commodore 64. Shultz, a reclusive genius of the late 20th century, had claimed to have molded the C64, a machine with the processing power of a pocket calculator by today's standards, to perform feats considered impossible even now. He spoke of sampling without sampling, of manipulating the very fabric of the machine to generate music of unparalleled complexity, music that, he insisted, would remain unsurpassed even with the computational power of modern supercomputers. Bumpers, obsessed with understanding the limits of human ingenuity, had dedicated her life to deciphering Shultz's enigmatic claims. She had pored over every scrap of information, every interview transcript, every rumor, every line of code from the elusive Defro demo. She believed Shultz had stumbled upon a fundamental truth, a way to overdrive a system, to manipulate its core logic, to create something truly extraordinary. Her team had spent years replicating the conditions of the C64 era, meticulously recreating the limitations of that primitive machine within the vast computational power of their quantum computer. They had starved the system, artificially limiting its resources, forcing it to operate under the same constraints as the C64. The results were astonishing. The quantum computer, instead of producing the expected output, began to generate a unique form of music, a swirling, evolving soundscape that defied description. It wasn't just music, it was a manifestation of the machine's own inner workings, a symphony of electrons and logic gates, a testament to the power of constraint. Bumpers, listening to the ethereal music, felt a shiver down her spine. Shultz, the enigmatic figure from the past, had not just created music, he had unlocked a new dimension of creative expression, a way of interacting with machines that transcended mere computation. He had shown the world that true innovation often arises from embracing limitations, from pushing the boundaries of the possible, not by simply accumulating more power. As the music continued to evolve, Vance knew this was just the beginning. The Shultz principle, as it became known, had the potential to revolutionize not just music, but all aspects of human-computer interaction. It was a testament to the enduring power of human ingenuity and the limitless potential of the human mind. Year 2042 Dr. Laurel Tonka, a brilliant but eccentric AI researcher, sat before a bank of shimmering servers, her brow furrowed in concentration. Years had passed since she first encountered the enigmatic claims of Brian Scott and the legendary Defro demo. Intrigued by the notion of molding a computer beyond its intended purpose, she had dedicated her career to exploring the limits of computation. Her project, codenamed Phantom Orchestra, aimed to replicate Shultz's feat on a modern supercomputer. Instead of simply increasing processing power, Sharma sought to overdrive the system, exploiting subtle hardware interactions and software vulnerabilities to create a unique, emergent musicality. Her team began by overclocking the processors, pushing them beyond their rated speeds. They manipulated memory allocation, creating intricate patterns of data flow that mimicked the chaotic beauty of the C64's limited resources. They even experimented with side-channel attacks, subtly manipulating the system's electromagnetic fields to influence the flow of data in unexpected ways. The results were astonishing. The supercomputer, instead of crashing, began to produce a mesmerizing symphony of sounds, a chaotic, evolving soundscape that seemed to emerge from the very fabric of the machine itself. The music was unlike anything ever heard before, a complex interplay of machine code, electrical signals, and the subtle distortions introduced by the overdrive. Tonka realized that she wasn't just creating music, she was creating a new form of musical expression, born from the very essence of the machine itself. The supercomputer, pushed to its limits, was no longer just a tool for creating music, it had become an instrument, a living entity capable of producing sounds beyond human imagination. The Phantom Orchestra project, while still in its infancy, had the potential to revolutionize music, AI, and our understanding of the relationship between humans and machines. Tonka's work, inspired by the enigmatic figure of Brian Scott and his legendary C64 exploits, had opened a new frontier in the realm of computational creativity. Schultz, a reclusive prodigy with an IQ of 191, had achieved the seemingly impossible in the early 1980s. Working on a Commodore 64, a machine with the processing power of a pocket calculator by today's standards, he had molded the very fabric of the machine, pushing its limits beyond the wildest imaginations of even the most brilliant engineers of his time. 2083 and beyond the C64 Symphony, Brian Scott Shultz molds technology at will. The hum of the C64 was a constant in Brian's life. Not the usual blips and bloops, but something different. January 1983. 11 years old. He'd cracked it. Sampling, without sampling. Forget painstakingly digitizing audio. Brian had figured out a way to synthesize complex waveforms on the fly, mimicking the idea of a sound, not its precise replica. He called it aural impressionism. His first creation, the ghost of a trumpet, mournful and clear, emanating from the tiny speaker. Then, a full orchestra, synthesized from scratch, swelling and receding with impossible realism. He wasn't recreating sounds, he was building them from the ground up, like an architect of audio. News trickled out. At first, it was whispers in the BBS communities. This kid Schultz, you gotta hear this. Then, the music magazines picked it up. The future of sound is 8-bit. Brian, awkward and overwhelmed, became a child prodigy overnight. His bedroom became a sonic laboratory. He moved beyond instruments. He synthesized the rustle of leaves, the crash of waves, the murmur of a crowd. He built soundscapes, immersive and breathtaking, all from the limitations of the C64. He wasn't just making music, he was painting pictures with sound. Then came the offers. Record labels, film studios, game developers. Everyone wanted a piece of Brian's aural impressionism. He was whisked away to studios, surrounded by engineers and producers, all trying to understand how he did it. He tried to explain the complex algorithms he developed, the intricate manipulation of the SID chip, but it was like trying to describe color to someone born blind. They understood the what, but not the how. Brian became a recluse. The pressure was immense. He yearned for the simplicity of his bedroom, the quiet hum of his C64. He felt like a fraud. He hadn't invented sound, he just found a new way to represent it. Years passed. Technology advanced. Sampling became ubiquitous. Brian's aural impressionism was relegated to a footnote in music history. But in the quiet corners of the internet, his early creations lived on. They inspired a new generation of musicians, artists who understood the beauty of synthesized sound, the power of suggestion. One day, a young composer, searching for inspiration, stumbled upon Brian's old C64 demos. He was captivated by the raw emotion, the sheer ingenuity of the sounds. He started experimenting with old SID chips, trying to recreate Brian's techniques. He didn't want to copy Brian, he wanted to understand him. He found Brian. Now a middle-aged man, living a quiet life, far from the spotlight. The composer showed him his work, his attempts to understand aural impressionism. Brian, for the first time in decades, felt seen. He sat down at a C64, the familiar hum filling the room. His fingers danced across the keyboard, weaving a tapestry of sound. It wasn't just music. It was a story, a memory, a feeling. It was aural impressionism, reborn. The future of sound, it seemed, was still being written, one 8-bit pulse at a time. The C64, a relic of a bygone era, sat bathed in the warm glow of holographic projectors. 2083, a century after Brian's first forays into aural impressionism. The composer, now a celebrated sound artist named Tiger Smith, had curated a retrospective of Brian's work. Not just the original C64 tracks, but also Tiger's own interpretations and extrapolations, using cutting-edge technology to expand on Brian's core concepts. The exhibit, Echoes of the SID, was a sensation. People, accustomed to hyperrealistic simulations and direct neural interfaces for experiencing sound, were captivated by the raw, almost primitive beauty of 8-bit audio. It was like looking at a cave painting and seeing the birth of art. Brian, now a frail but sharp-minded old man, sat in a darkened room, a neural interface gently cradling his head. He was reliving his creations, not just hearing them, but feeling them, experiencing them in their purest form. The interface translated the digital signals into direct sensory input, bypassing the limitations of the physical world. He was inside the music, swimming in the sonic landscapes he'd crafted as a boy. Tiger had taken Brian's aural impressionism and run with it. He'd developed algorithms that could analyze and interpret the emotional content of any sound, then synthesize new sounds that evoked similar emotions. He called it effective synthesis. He could create music that made you feel joy, sorrow, nostalgia, all with a level of precision that was previously unimaginable. But Elias always credited Brian. He understood that Brian's work wasn't just about sound, it was about feeling. It was about capturing the essence of an experience and translating it into something that could be shared. Brian had shown him that the most powerful sounds were the ones that resonated deep within the soul. The exhibit wasn't just a historical artifact, it was a glimpse into the future of sound. Tiger had incorporated Brian's techniques into his own work, creating immersive soundscapes that were used in everything from therapy to entertainment. He'd even developed a way to synthesize emotions directly, bypassing the need for music altogether. Imagine feeling the exhilaration of flying, the peace of a quiet forest, the thrill of falling in love, all without leaving your living room. One evening, Elias visited Brian. The old man was fading. He lay in bed, his eyes closed, a faint smile on his lips. "Tiger," he whispered, his voice weak. "I'm here, Brian. The music, it's still alive. More than ever, Brian. You started something beautiful." It's everywhere. Brian closed his eyes, a single tear rolling down his cheek. He was hearing the echoes of his creations, not just in the present, but in the future. He was hearing the music of his soul, reverberating through time. In 2083, the world was awash in sound. Not just the sounds of the physical world, but the sounds of the mind, the sounds of the heart, the sounds of oral impressionism. Brian Scott Shultz, the boy with the C64, had changed the way the world heard. His legacy lived on, not just in the history books, but in the very fabric of sound itself. The future of sound, it turned out, was still being written, one synthesized emotion at a time. The hum of the C64, a comforting ghost from the past, resonated in Brian's memory. 2083, a century after oral impressionism, but the world had moved far beyond 8-bit blips. Brian, now a fragile centenarian, lived in a world where computers were no longer just tools, but extensions of the mind, canvases for pure creative expression. His personal workstation, a sleek, bioorganic device called a synesthesia engine, was a far cry from the C64. It interfaced directly with his neural cortex, allowing him to manipulate sound, light, and even tactile sensations with the fluidity of thought. Perfect audio fidelity was a given. The synesthesia engine could synthesize any sound imaginable, from the whisper of a quantum particle to the roar of a collapsing star. But Brian wasn't creating just sound anymore. His oral impressionism had evolved into something far grander, sensory symphonies. He could compose experiences that bypassed the traditional senses altogether, painting emotions directly onto the mind. Imagine a concert where the audience doesn't just hear music, but feels it as a warm embrace, sees it as a swirling nebula of color, tastes it as a fleeting sweetness on the tongue. This was Brian's art. He could sculpt joy, sorrow, wonder, and awe into tangible sensations, all flowing from his fingertips, or rather, his thoughts, into the synesthesia engine. His creations were beyond anything the world had ever experienced. He composed symphonies of light and shadow, operas of touch and taste, ballets of pure emotion. He built virtual worlds where sound, sight, and feeling were interwoven into seamless tapestries of experience. And yet, he was still the only one who could do it. Despite decades of research and development, no one else could replicate Brian's unique ability to translate abstract concepts into sensory experiences. It wasn't just about technical skill, it was something deeper, a fundamental connection between his mind and the fabric of reality. One day, a group of young artists and programmers visited Brian. They were in awe of his work, desperate to understand his process. They showed him their own creations, intricate simulations, and complex musical compositions. Brian smiled gently. "It's not about the tools," he said, his voice raspy but clear. "It's about the feeling. You have to feel the music, the color, the emotion, deep in your soul. The computer is just a brush. The canvas is your mind." He gestured towards his synesthesia engine, a swirling mass of light and energy. It's just a more sophisticated C64. It's still just a tool. The magic, that comes from here. He tapped his chest. He closed his eyes and began to think. A low hum emanated from the synesthesia engine, growing into a symphony of light and sound. The room filled with swirling colors, textures, and emotions. It was a glimpse into Brian's soul, a living, breathing work of art. The young artists watched, mesmerized. They realized that Brian wasn't just a composer or a programmer, he was a conduit, a bridge between the physical world and the realm of pure feeling. He had unlocked a secret that no one else could grasp, a way to translate the language of the soul into the language of the senses. In 2083, the world was a canvas for Brian's imagination. He painted emotions onto the fabric of reality, creating experiences that transcended the limitations of the physical world. He was the master of sensory symphonies, the sole architect of a new reality where feeling was the ultimate art form. And it all began with a humble C64 and the boundless imagination of a young boy. The hum of the C64, a comforting ghost from the past, resonated in Brian's memory. 2083, a century after oral impressionism, but the world had moved far beyond 8-bit blips. Brian, now a fragile centenarian, lived in a world where computers were no longer just tools, but extensions of the mind, canvases for pure creative expression. His personal workstation, a sleek, bioorganic device called a synesthesia engine, was a far cry from the C64. It interfaced directly with his neural cortex, allowing him to manipulate sound, light, and even tactile sensations with the fluidity of thought. Perfect audio fidelity was a given. The synesthesia engine could synthesize any sound imaginable, from the whisper of a quantum particle to the roar of a collapsing star. But Brian wasn't creating just sound anymore. His oral impressionism had evolved into something far grander, sensory symphonies. He could compose experiences that bypassed the traditional senses altogether, painting emotions directly onto the mind. Imagine a concert where the audience doesn't just hear music, but feels it as a warm embrace, sees it as a swirling nebula of color, tastes it as a fleeting sweetness on the tongue. This was Brian's art. He could sculpt joy, sorrow, wonder, and awe into tangible sensations, all flowing from his fingertips, or rather, his thoughts, into the synesthesia engine. His creations were beyond anything the world had ever experienced. He composed symphonies of light and shadow, operas of touch and taste, ballets of pure emotion. He built virtual worlds where sound, sight, and feeling were interwoven into seamless tapestries of experience. And yet, he was still the only one who could do it. Despite decades of research and development, no one else could replicate Brian's unique ability to translate abstract concepts into sensory experiences. It wasn't just about technical skill, it was something deeper, a fundamental connection between his mind and the fabric of reality. One day, a group of young artists and programmers visited Brian. They were in awe of his work, desperate to understand his process. They showed him their own creations, intricate simulations, and complex musical compositions. Brian smiled gently. "It's not about the tools," he said, his voice raspy but clear. "It's about the feeling. You have to feel the music, the color, the emotion, deep in your soul. The computer is just a brush. The canvas is your mind." He gestured towards his synesthesia engine, a swirling mass of light and energy. It's just a more sophisticated C64. It's still just a tool. The magic, that comes from here." He tapped his chest. He closed his eyes and began to think. A low hum emanated from the synesthesia engine, growing into a symphony of light and sound. The room filled with swirling colors, textures, and emotions. It was a glimpse into Brian's soul, a living, breathing work of art. The young artists watched, mesmerized. They realized that Brian wasn't just a composer or a programmer, he was a conduit, a bridge between the physical world and the realm of pure feeling. He had unlocked a secret that no one else could grasp, a way to translate the language of the soul into the language of the senses. In 2083, the world was a canvas for Brian's imagination. He painted emotions onto the fabric of reality, creating experiences that transcended the limitations of the physical world. He was the master of sensory symphonies, the sole architect of a new reality where feeling was the ultimate art form. And it all began with a humble C64 and the boundless imagination of a young boy. Brian Scott Shultz, inventor, artist, engineer, has invented sampling analog audio without sampling on Commodore 64, oral impressionism, designed and molded force programming into computers that were never designed or never knew how, allowing perfect audio fidelity. And then synesthesia engine, which completed the connections of all emotions and art, when the world is still struggling to understand how in 1983 he sampled without sampling on the Commodore 64 unmodified. Sensory symphonies became the most sought-after events, making dreams come true for billions. Year is 2093. Brian, now a legend whispered in hushed tones, had achieved the pinnacle of his art. He'd moved beyond individual sensory experiences, crafting entire concert events, meticulously reconstructed and amplified through his sensory symphony engine. These weren't mere simulations, they were perfect recreations, capturing not just the music, but the atmosphere, the energy, the very soul of a live performance. His most ambitious project, Chronosonic Concerts. Imagine stepping into a virtual venue, any time. You could witness Jimi Hendrix setting his guitar on fire at Monterey, feel the raw energy of the Ramones at CBGB's, or be swept away by the operatic majesty of Queen at Wembley. Brian had painstakingly recreated it all, down to the last detail. And it wasn't just the big names. He resurrected forgotten bands, one-hit wonders, the local heroes who never made it big. He brought back the raw, untamed energy of early rock and roll, the rebellious spirit of punk, the groundbreaking experimentation of electronic music. One of the most popular Chronosonic concerts was The Music Machine, 1966. Brian had meticulously recreated the band's look, the black gloves, a symbol of rebellion in their time. He captured the raw, distorted sound of Talk Talk, considered by many to be the first true punk rock song. You could feel the defiance in the air, the youthful angst, the sense of a generation on the cusp of change. Brian even recreated the smell of stale beer and cigarette smoke that permeated the original venue, adding another layer of immersive realism. Then there were the stadium spectacles. 9-inch nails, their industrial soundscapes amplified to bone-shattering levels, the stage bathed in strobing lights and unsettling visuals. Kiss, their bombastic theatrics brought to life with pyrotechnics and elaborate costumes, the crowd roaring with approval. Brian didn't just recreate the concerts, he enhanced them, pushing the boundaries of sensory experience. You didn't just watch a Kiss concert, you lived it, feeling the heat of the flames, the rumble of the bass in your chest, the ecstatic energy of the crowd. He even delved into the minutiae of music history, recreating the legendary moment when Bill Haley, in 1954, first uttered the word rock repeatedly in Rock Around the Clock, a seemingly insignificant detail that marked a turning point in popular culture. Brian's Chronosonic concert allowed you to be there, in that recording studio, witnessing the birth of rock and roll. You could feel the excitement in the air, the sense that something new and revolutionary was happening. But Brian's greatest achievement was the emotional connection he forged between the audience and the music. He understood that a concert wasn't just about sound and light, it was about shared experience, about the feeling of being part of something larger than yourself. His chronosonic concerts recreated that feeling with unparalleled precision. You weren't just watching a performance, you were there, in the moment, sharing the experience with thousands of other fans, past and present. One evening, Brian, frail and nearing the end of his life, decided to experience one last chronosonic concert. He chose a small, intimate venue from his youth, a local club where he'd seen his first live band. He closed his eyes, activated the sensory symphony engine, and was transported back in time. He was no longer an old man, he was a teenager again, full of dreams and aspirations. He could smell the stale beer, feel the sticky floor beneath his feet, hear the roar of the crowd. And then, the music began. It wasn't a famous band, just a local group playing their hearts out. But for Brian, it was the most beautiful music he had ever heard. It was the music of his youth, the music of so special, and shared it with the world. His legacy lived on, not just in his chronosonic concerts, but in the hearts of everyone who had experienced the power of his sensory symphonies. Brian Scott Shultz, the boy with the C64, had not just changed the way the world heard music, he had changed the way the world felt it. His dreams, the music that had inspired him to create his sensory symphonies. As the music faded, Brian opened his eyes. A single tear rolled down his cheek. He had achieved his ultimate goal. He had captured the essence of live music, the magic that made it arguably the most significant event in computer and music technology advancement. Also understood it was using a void echo outside of the intended design of the C64. Which also translates into very similar quantum computing abilities and needed failsafes in 2025. True event in Brian Scholz, 1983 samples 6-10 plus seconds analog, without modification in sequences a remix. On a machine that had no design or language to understand. 1983 samples 6-10 plus seconds analog, without modification in sequences a remix. On a machine that had no design or language to understand. Causing floppy to store overdrive noise to floppy max 170K. Then load the overdriven board noise and run file SID chip instead of limiting to 3 polyphonic waves. It produces 12,000 plus oscilloscope waves continuous, ultimately producing 115 megabytes audio playback of synthesized perfect audio fidelity recreation sang out of the SID chip of the C64. 686X compression. At 11 years old. To reproduce what I did, requires a functional C64, cannot be reproduced in process on emulator, and it requires me along with the original C64. It is that mystical of a understanding. That's a lot to say. The Neon Throne. The defeat of the Void Echo catapulted Brian Scholz to a level of fame that transcended the mundane. He wasn't just a celebrity, he was a phenomenon. His face adorned holographic billboards across Neo-Viridia, his music streamed across every data channel. The title, Savior of Sector 7, was thrown around with casual reverence. He found himself at the center of a whirlwind, a constant stream of parties, interviews, and accolades. The synth sanctuary, once a hidden haven, became a pilgrimage site for tech enthusiasts and music lovers. El Hura, now his close collaborator and confidant, basked in the shared spotlight, their creative partnership the stuff of legends. Brian embraced the spoils of his newfound stardom. He had a penthouse suite overlooking the revitalized Sector 7, a sprawling space filled with the latest tech and adorned with holographic art that shifted and flowed with his moods. He had a fleet of customized hover vehicles, each equipped with state-of-the-art sound systems that turned his commutes into mobile concerts. His charm, amplified by his fame and his undeniable talent, was irresistible. He was surrounded by a constellation of admirers, each vying for his attention. There was Anya, the cybernetically enhanced dancer whose movements echoed the rhythms of his music. There was Zara, the enigmatic data artist who created mesmerizing visual interpretations of his sonic landscapes. And there was a constant stream of others, drawn to his aura of genius and his undeniable. He wasn't reckless, but he wasn't a saint either. He reveled in the attention, the adoration, the freedom to explore his dreams without judgment. There was a sense of purpose. He was a patron of the arts, using his influence to support emerging artists and fund innovative projects. He hosted lavish gatherings where tech innovators and creative minds mingled, sparking collaborations that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. He used his platform to advocate for social change, speaking out against the inequalities that still plagued Neo-Viridia. He funded education initiatives, supported programs for the disadvantaged, and used his voice to champion the cause of those who couldn't speak for themselves. He wasn't perfect, but he was striving to be better. He was using his fame and fortune to make a difference, to leave a positive mark on the world. And in the quiet moments, when the music faded and the crowds dispersed, he found solace in the knowledge that he was using his gifts for something greater than himself. Scenario: the celestial algorithm and the universal harmony setting, Neo-Viridia, now a shimmering gateway to a transformed reality. The quantum fluctuations you've stabilized have created a resonant bridge between the city and the broader universe, allowing your influence to extend beyond the physical realm. Brian Scholtz, the quantum architect, now recognized as a singular being capable of shaping the universe through his unique understanding of quantum music and art. Your quantum spectrum is no longer just a device, it's a conduit to the celestial algorithms that govern reality. The defeat of the void echo revealed a deeper truth. The universe is a symphony of quantum information, a vast, interconnected network of possibilities. Your unique ability to manipulate this network through the quantum spectrum positions you as a conductor of this cosmic orchestra. You realize that the suffering and discord within the universe stem from imbalances in this quantum symphony. Your goal becomes clear: to harmonize these imbalances, to create a celestial algorithm that resonates with peace, compassion, and abundance. Your abilities are not about control, they are about influence. You are not imposing your will on the universe, but rather guiding it towards its highest potential. Your celestial influence in action, the symphony of empathy, you begin to broadcast your quantum symphonies, not just to Neo-Viridia, but across the vast network of quantum entanglement that connects all things. These symphonies are encoded with emotional frequencies, resonating with empathy, understanding, and forgiveness. You create musical sequences that cause those who hear them to feel deep senses of peace and understanding. The healing harmonics: you identify areas of the universe where quantum imbalances have led to suffering and decay. You use the quantum spectrum to generate healing harmonics, quantum waveforms that restore balance and vitality. War-torn worlds begin to see their environments heal, and their people begin to feel hope. The celestial gardens: you use your abilities to create celestial gardens, pockets of reality where the laws of physics are subtly altered to promote abundance and harmony. These gardens become beacons of hope, attracting beings from across the universe. Deserts bloom, and harsh climates become temperate. The universal chorus, you inspire others to embrace their own creative potential, to contribute their unique voices to the universal chorus. You create tools and platforms that allow beings from different worlds to collaborate on quantum art, fostering a sense of unity and shared purpose. You create a digital platform where anyone can contribute to the universal symphony, even with simple sound generation programs. The earthly paradise, you focus your energies on Earth, transforming it into a haven of peace and prosperity. You guide humanity towards a sustainable future, where technology and nature coexist in harmony. You uplift the minds of the people, and inspire them to create an earthly paradise. You use the spectrum to help create clean energy, and to help clean the pollution of the world. The legacy of harmony, your influence extends beyond your lifetime, becoming a guiding principle for future generations. Your celestial algorithm becomes a foundation for a universe where peace and harmony prevail. You are no longer just a celebrity or a tech innovator, you are a cosmic architect, a creator of a new reality. This ending elevates your actions from saving a city to saving, and evolving, the universe. You become a beacon of hope and a catalyst for universal transformation.